In one of his books, Daniel Dennett, I think it's Breaking the Spell actually, but it might be another one. He's talking about evolution, and he says that in the evolutionary development of species, there are no skyhooks. Skyhooks are a kind of Deus ex machina, with the reaching down of some sort of divine power to pull up a species to a higher stage of development that it can reach under its own steam. He says there's no such thing as skyhooks, but there are, he says, cranes. And cranes are mechanisms that are built from the ground up, which once they are built have the ability to assist in the further building of complexity, just the way that cranes do in real life. And he gives a number of examples. The prokaryotic revolution or invasion he calls a crane, because it allows the development of multicellular complex life forms. What else? Oh, sexual reproduction, he says, is a crane, because it allows for the mixing of genomes. And the third crane he mentions, I think, is consciousness, which allows a sort of self-reflective process of cognition and the construction of cultures and so on, which allow for development in perhaps mimetic development rather than genetic development, but certainly some sort of developmental processes which would not be possible in any other way without the construction of this mechanism, crane mechanism. One of the things I'm thinking about in relation to that is to do with morality and ethics. As I think I've mentioned before, one of the criticisms that's often levelled at atheists is that without any sort of divine power or sort of theistic guidance, we would have no basis for our morals and our ethics. I think there's a quotation from the Brothers Karamazov, something like that, that's often cited in that regard, that without God, nothing would be forbidden. And atheists typically respond to that by pointing out, well, various flaws in it. The fact that the least atheist countries in the world, Sweden for example, tend to be the most law-abiding, and to the extent that law is a measure of morality, that's an indicator. Also, there's a suggestion that atheists are underrepresented in prison populations, so again, to the extent that law is an indicator of morality, that suggests that there's no correlation there. And certainly in the United States, the states with the highest level of things like divorce, abortion, single-parent family, teenage pregnancy, and many crime statistics, tend also to be the states which are the most religious. And again, to the extent that those statistics represent moral laxity, I'm not saying they do necessarily, but religious people often would say that, then again, suggests, if anything, an inverse correlation between religiosity and what they consider to be morality. So there's a number of factors which, and of course the one that Christopher Hitchens mentions quite often in relation to Christian morality, when he says that if we assume that Christian morality is based on the Ten Commandments, we would have to assume, therefore, up until the moment that Moses came down from the mountain, his people spent most of their time murdering and raping and robbing and being generally immoral, and that's unlikely to be the case, given that civil societies, in order to function at all, have to agree to get on somehow. Otherwise they wouldn't have made it to the foot of the mountain in the first place. So for those reasons that correlation is not good. The atheist response to that is when questioning what is the basis of morality then if it's not religious scripture. The basis of morality is usually cited as being grounded in evolution. That animals do show altruistic behaviour, they show something that looks like compassion, they typically give their life for the good of the swarm or the pack or something like that. It does happen. So these things are said to be instances of altruistic behaviour grounded in the adaptive advantages of such behaviour to not the individual, of course, but to their gene. And this is something that Dawkins talks about in the selfish gene, I believe. But it's pretty well established. It is a convincing account, but I am wondering, in relation to this idea that Dennett talks about in terms of cranes, whether we actually need to look to that level of explanation, to look to the genome, to look to that particular crane, if you like, to explain and qualify our moral sense or our ethical practices. In some ways it seems as if that's just, we're looking at the wrong level of it. It's rather like looking like quantum mechanics to explain the movement of billiard balls. You can do it, but what's the point? It may be more enlightening in many ways and possibly useful not to look at that level, but to look at the level of sort of culture and consciousness, really. We do good, it seems to me, because it feels right, and because we have constructed such things as the golden rule, the categorical imperative, which do feature in religions, but undoubtedly predate them and postdate them indeed. And the golden rule and the categorical imperative and other sort of moral statements are, well, they may have had no relationship to evolution, in the same relationship as a building is related to the crane that constructs it. But once that building is in place, once that moral precept is in place, it has a kind of structure and existence of its own, and you can live within the terms of that moral precept to the extent of possibly even modifying it or deciding when to apply it, without necessarily referring back to the crane that built it, the evolutionary process that allowed for the realization of that and its enshrinement within cultural practices. Just in relation, this is something I talked about before, but just in relation to religion, one of the mechanisms, it's not really in relation to religion at all actually, but it has a relationship. One of the moral processes, I talked about the golden rule and the categorical imperative, but another strategy that we have in secular life as well as in religious life is the identification of good examples, role models, and heroes, I guess. And we have to consciously enshrine their behaviour, their role examples in semi-permanent form, literature, that kind of thing. And we have the ability to decide in some level, consciously perhaps even, but also non-consciously, to adopt some of those behaviours. I think we see this in everything from the what would Jesus do movement to my kids when they were small wanting to be firemen. standing under a bridge. And the snow is all gone.